Before you begin working on the helideck, your HLO should provide guidance on correct clothing. For your safety and the safety of others, you should be correctly dressed with no loose articles. Your clothes should be free of oil and drilling mud. Prior to the aircraft's arrival, check that the helideck is prepared in accordance with your company's instructions. If you see anything which you feel is unsafe, draw it to your HLO's attention. Your HLO is your supervisor on the helideck at all times and should be the first person on and the last person off the deck. He will brief you before each aircraft lands. If it's your responsibility, make sure embarking passengers are fully briefed and prepared for the flight before the helicopter arrives. Baggage and freight should be weighed and labelled to identify its destination. During a normal approach, the helideck crew should always be off the helideck, in a safe area. Be vigilant as the helicopter approaches. If you see anything which may prevent a safe landing, inform your HLO immediately, who will tell the pilot and go onto the helideck and wave the aircraft off. If it is not possible to make radio contact with the helicopter, your HLO should indicate to the pilot whether it is safe to land or not by means of appropriate light or hand signals. After the aircraft has landed, do not approach until the anti-collision light has been switched off and the pilot has given a clear thumbs up. You should approach from the side of the helicopter in view of the pilot. If you're required to move forward of the pilot's door while under the rotor, obtain the pilot's permission by radio or visual signal. If chocks are required by the pilot, the soft bag type are preferable. You should place them in front and behind both main wheels. During exchange of paperwork, the HLO should inform the pilot of any unusual items. If a pilot gets out of the aircraft, hold the door, especially in windy conditions. In certain circumstances, both pilots may be required to stay in the cockpit. As few members of the helideck crew as possible should be moving around the aircraft, and the HLO should try and remain in sight of the pilots wherever possible. It will, however, be up to the HLO to check all aspects of aircraft security. Generally, baggage is unloaded with the passengers still on the aircraft, so both speed and efficiency are called for. On each aircraft, the location of the baggage bay and the method of stowage is different. These will be shown in the individual aircraft briefings. Light items of baggage must not be left unattended. You should always have help to unload the baggage. Bags should be positioned in a line from the cabin door in a safe direction or completely removed from the helideck, depending on weather conditions and your company's instructions. Baggage trolleys, if used, must be controlled at all times. Your HLO will indicate to the pilot when ready to receive passengers with this signal. Ensure that the passengers disembark in a safe direction. They will normally wear their life jackets until they are below deck, where they will be passed over to passengers waiting to board the aircraft. If there are more passengers waiting to leave than have arrived, then extra jackets carried on the aircraft should be taken below. A spare life jacket may be carried should one be found to be unserviceable. In strong wind conditions, the preferred method of taking slightly built passengers to and from the aircraft is to assist across the deck. Baggage should be taken separately, and no items of baggage or freight should be left unattended on the helideck. If handlines are required, they should be rigged in accordance with your company's instructions, and the pilot should be advised of their intended use before landing. The HLO is to ensure the line is never secured to any part of the aircraft. It must always be laid toward the aircraft in a safe direction from the side and wherever possible in view of the pilot. When securing or releasing the handline, the line must remain under tension at all times. To unload freight from the cabin, the straps should be undone, rolled up and stowed neatly in accordance with the pilot's instructions. To avoid unnecessary damage, take care not to allow freight to touch anything except the cabin floor. Any heavy freight carried on the load spreaders must be moved to the door on spreaders all the way. Lighter freight carried on the cabin floor should not be tipped or tilted, as this load may now overstress the floor. Particular care must be taken at the door sill and with external parts of the aircraft. Once the cabin is clear of passengers and freight, check it for general security and tidiness. If freight is to be carried inbound, it should be loaded before passenger baggage and refueling. Ensure it is all available for inspection by the pilot, whose responsibility it is to check that it is safe and suitable for carriage. When possible, freight should be loaded in the baggage bay. However, no single item should normally exceed 75 pounds unless cleared by the pilot. Items of dangerous cargo should be identified to the pilot, who will ensure that it is stowed in the correct place. The pilot will also ensure it's safely loaded. Dense loads will require spreader boards, which you must provide. It's easier to fit the straps before loading.
Okay.
Long items must be carried horizontally.
Right,
All freight must be suitable for carriage. It must not be in any condition which could damage the helicopter. If in doubt, ask the pilot.
Okay, let's get them forward. Get rid of the seats first of all. So take them up the.
If seats have to be folded or removed to provide space for a load, the pilot may ask for your assistance.
Okay, knees off the top, just roll on the deck, that'll be fine. And then bring the seats forward, okay? Top, just roll on the deck.
Flight deck crew refreshments should be carried in a sealed container and brought to the cockpit through the helicopter's cabin, then placed on the floor between the pilots. Unless specifically requested by the pilot, refreshments must not be passed through the window to avoid spillage or knocking the controls.
Okay, some liquids. Thank you.
Although the locations of fuel points differ on each aircraft, there are two basic methods of refueling. The first is pressure refueling, where a seal is made between the fuel line and the aircraft. And the second is gravity refueling, which is the same as putting fuel into your car. Some aircraft use only one system, and some are capable of both. You should be told in advance of its arrival whether an aircraft will require fuel and whether the pressure or gravity system is to be used.
So you, when the chopper lands, go and get a spare life jacket.
Before beginning refueling, you must take a sample in accordance with your company's procedures. You then check it for water contamination using a detection capsule. The sample and water detection capsule must be shown to the pilot before refueling begins. You should first attach the bonding lead, if possible, in view of the pilot. This is a typical pressure fuel point. First remove the cap. Then, before connecting the hose, earth it to the aircraft. When sufficient fuel has been taken on board, the pilot will signal you to stop. Disconnect the hose before undoing the earthing lead. Then replace the cap. Check the cap is secure. If the cap has witness marks, make sure they are aligned. Unclip the bonding lead and show it to the pilot. The pilot should then be shown a post-refueling sample. Once accepted, the relevant documentation will be completed. This is a typical gravity refueling point. The pilot will indicate which tank to fill first with this signal. You should first attach the bonding lead, if possible in view of the pilot, then undo the first fuel cap. The method of removing the cap will depend on the particular aircraft. Some simply twist off, where others have some type of securing lug. Before refueling, earth the nozzle. To avoid contamination, ensure the cap on the nozzle is removed with it pointing down. Pump the fuel until the pilot signals you to stop. Or, if you are filling the tanks, a slow rate of refueling may be required toward the end to enable the contents to settle in the group of tanks. On most aircraft, the tanks are full only when the fuel comes up to the very top of the neck. Once refueling on each tank is complete, replace the cap. Again, the exact method of replacing the cap will vary from aircraft to aircraft. Check the cap is secure. If the cap has witness marks, make sure they are aligned. Unclip the bonding lead and show it to the pilot. The pilot should then be shown a post-refueling sample. Once accepted, the relevant documentation will be completed. If Prist anti-icing additive is required to be mixed with the fuel, you will be informed. It is normally carried in the aircraft. Ensure the canister attachment tube is secure at both the canister and refuel nozzle. To ensure even mixing, discharge the Prist all the time you are refueling. It is recommended that gloves and safety glasses are worn during this procedure. You should not allow passengers onto the helideck until they are fully prepared for the flight in accordance with your company's instructions. They should have their life jackets fitted, and you should check them to make sure they are properly fastened and not twisted. Ensure the passengers remain well clear of the rotors until they are in a position at the side of the aircraft in line with the cabin door. As they approach from that side, stand between them and any potential dangers. Any other approach direction must be agreed between the pilot and the HLO. The preferred method of loading baggage is for the passengers to approach the aircraft, carrying it, place it in a safe area near the baggage bay, and board the aircraft. Wherever possible, group and load the baggage by destination and advise the pilot accordingly. Individual aircraft require specific methods of stowing baggage, and they will be dealt with in the individual aircraft briefs. Once you have completed baggage loading, the pilot will check the baggage compartment for security, and then you may close it. Procedures for loading passengers will be shown on the individual aircraft briefings. When you have completed your duties, you should leave the helideck in a safe direction. After the pilot has finished checking the aircraft exterior, your HLO should hold the door as the pilot boards. Ensure there are no further requirements from the pilots. Visually check the aircraft from a safe position, then leave the helideck. If chocks are to be removed, the pilot will signal the HLO, who in turn will signal you to remove them. In certain circumstances, the pilot may wish to take off without chocks being removed. The HLO will then look for any other aircraft in the vicinity and indicate their position to the pilot. As the aircraft takes off, you should watch it. If you notice anything out of the ordinary, the HLO is to notify the pilot by the quickest means available. If the helicopter is to be shut down, the pilot will advise you before landing. whether to unload the aircraft before or after the shutdown. If chocks are required, you will be informed. Remain clear of the helideck during shutdown. On completion, the pilot will indicate to you when it is safe to approach the aircraft. If after a shutdown the aircraft needs to be secured, the pilot may ask for your assistance. During aircraft startup, the pilot will indicate which engine is being started and when the rotors are being engaged. Remain well clear of the rotors and in sight of the pilot. If an external electrical power supply has been used, the pilot will indicate when it is safe to remove it. Although the location of the plug will be different in each aircraft, you simply disconnect the plug and secure the panel. If during startup or shutdown you see smoke or fire from any area of the aircraft, do not attempt to extinguish it immediately, but draw it to the pilot's attention. The pilot will use the aircraft extinguisher system. Your assistance may then be requested, but don't approach the aircraft until after the rotors have been shut down, unless specifically instructed. If you're required to fight a fire, do so by placing the lance into the appropriate inlet. If the pilot advises you of an emergency landing on your deck, it does not necessarily mean that there will be a crash. Pilots are highly trained to deal with all kinds of emergencies, and there is every chance that the aircraft will land safely. In this situation, you must prepare for a crash landing, firefighting and evacuation in accordance with your company's instructions. During a normal approach, the helideck crew should always be off the deck in a safe area. If the helicopter has declared an emergency landing, it is important that all persons are behind a hard structure until after the aircraft has landed. In the event of a helicopter crashing on the deck, firefighting procedures should be carried out as soon as possible to ensure that a fire does not develop. If the pilots are incapacitated, once the blades have stopped turning, or it is safe to do so, enter the cockpit and isolate the fuel and electrical systems to make the aircraft safe. The various methods for doing this will be shown in the specific aircraft briefs. During a medical evacuation, you should be prepared to assist. Any casualty not in a stretcher should be seated according to the pilot's instructions, and another passenger detailed to supervise in the event of an emergency evacuation.
Okay, so you look after them. Right.
The specific briefs will also show the correct method for loading a stretcher. You will generally be supervised in loading by the pilot.
Okay.
If you are transferred to a not normally manned installation and are nominated as the HLO for that helideck, you must be the first person to disembark from the helicopter, at which time your responsibilities as the HLO commence. When leaving the installation, you must be the last person to board the aircraft, having completed your duties in accordance with your company's procedures. Before commencement of any specialized operations, such as winching or external load lifting, You will be briefed on your responsibilities prior to the flight. Should you have any questions regarding your role as part of the helideck crew, ask your supervisor now.